All right, welcome back. Today's Monday, hopefully, and we're going to continue with section 6.2. You guys can either watch this individually or as a class. But from what we did yesterday, or excuse me, Friday, you found the sine or cosine or tangent of different angles using the sum or difference formulas. So sine of 15 degrees, cosine of 195, sine of 285. So it allows us to do that. Now there's some other things we do with the sum and difference formulas. And that's what we're going to go over today. All right, as you take a look at this, go ahead and get this down. No guided notes today. This is on your own. Pause this as needed. It says, let u, sine of u equal negative 3/5. Cosine of v equals 12 over 13. All right, pi is less than u is less than 3 pi over 2. So the first thing we do is what quadrant is u in? Okay, so if it's between pi and 3 pi over 2, it has to be in quadrant 3. All right, and 3 pi over 2 is less than v, is less than 2 pi. That means that v is in quadrant 4. Okay, v's in quadrant 4. All right, well, we want to find sine of u plus v. So sine of u plus v, if you look at your formula, okay, what's that going to be? That is going to be the sine of the first, sine of u, times the cosine of the second, cosine of v, plus cosine of the first, sine of the second. They just kind of flip the order. Well, we know sine of u, we know that. We know cosine of v, we know that, but we do not know cosine of u, or we do not know sine of v. We have to figure those out before we can go any further. So this is where their quadrant comes into play. All right, u is in quadrant 3. We know sine of u is negative 3/5. So that means the opposite side is 3. The hypotenuse, or the R value, is 5, and I'll put a little negative there. We need to figure out what that value there is. All right, Pythagorean theorem. Negative 3 squared plus x squared equals 5 squared. Some of you might already recognize that. Special type of triangle. Keep going. 9 plus x squared equals 25. And x squared equals 16. X equals 4. But at this spot here, we're going to want to use negative 4 for that one. All right, we're going to need to know the cosine of u. Since we're in quadrant 3, the cosine of u is going to equal negative 4/5, adjacent over hypotenuse. All right, our angle V. V is in, whoops, that's a terrible V. V is in quadrant 4. It is, cosine of V is 12 over 13. So if I draw this out, that means my hypotenuse is 13. My adjacent side is 12. I need to find the opposite side because I do need to find the sine of V. So again, use the Pythagorean theorem. 12 squared plus y squared equals 13 squared. 144 plus y squared equals 169. If you subtract 169 minus 144, you get 25. Y equals 5. So this is, again, a Pythagorean triple. You get a whole number. Well, also got to make sure you know, since it is in quadrant 4, it has to be negative 5. So what's going to be the sine of V? The sine of V is going to be negative 5 over 13. All right, so now we can go back and we can figure this out. So I got sine of u plus v equals the sine of u times the cosine of v plus the cosine of u times the sine of v. All right, the sine of u. from up above is negative 3/5. That does not go in for the u, it goes in for the whole thing. So you got negative 3/5 there. If you look up above, the cosine of v is positive 12 over 13. Plus cosine of u, which we figured out over here, is negative 4/5. Sine of v is negative 5/13. Okay, remember now, they replace the entire expression here. Sine of u is negative 3/5. All right, now just do a little bit of math here. Multiply those together. Negative 3 times 12 is negative 36. Over 5 times 13 is 65. Plus, negative times a negative is positive. 4 times 5 gives me 20 over 65. All right, so now my final answer, sine of u plus v, is going to be negative 36 plus 20, which is negative 16 over 65. That's our answer. Sine of u plus v is negative 16 over 65. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Basically the same type of problem. You're going to have asked to find the cosine of alpha minus beta. I'm going to give you the fact that the cosine of alpha is negative 2/5. The angle is in quadrant 2. The sine of beta is negative 3/7. The angle is in quadrant 4. All right, so go to your identity sheet. What is the formula for the cosine of alpha minus beta? Okay, that is going to be cosine of the first angle times cosine of the second angle plus sine of the first angle times sine of the second angle. All right, well, what do we know here? I know cosine of alpha is negative 2/5. I got that part. I know sine of beta is negative 3/7. I have that. I need to figure out cosine of beta. I need to figure out sine of alpha. So I'm going to have to draw out the scenario in the respective quadrants. All right, so alpha is in quadrant 2. Hold on here. Okay. Cosine of alpha, so this is alpha. That means the adjacent side will be negative 2. The hypotenuse will be 5. All right, so if I'm figuring this out, I need to find that y value. Negative 2 squared plus y squared equals 25. All right, make sure, triple check. Whenever you square that negative, you've got to make it positive. So you get 4 plus y squared equals 25. So that means y squared equals 21. Y square root of 21. All right, so what does that mean in terms of sine and cosine? We know the cosine, so that means that the sine of alpha is going to equal square root of 21 over 5. It's got to be positive because it's in quadrant 2. All right, let's figure out what else we need to know. Quadrant 4, sine of beta. We know sine of beta is negative 3/7. I need to find the x value so I can figure out what the cosine of beta is. So x squared plus negative 3 squared equals 7 squared. X squared plus 9 equals 49. X equals 40. X squared equals 40. X equals the square root of 40. All right, if it can be simplified, we always want to simplify. Now, square root of 40, do factor tree, whatever you need to do, that is going to be equivalent to x equals 2 square root of 10. 40 is 4 times 10. Square root of 4 is 2. All right, so we got that. So now what's the other piece we need to know from here? We need to know the cosine of beta. Cosine of beta will be a positive 2 square root of 10 over 7. All right, let's figure out our answer. Cosine alpha minus beta equals cosine alpha times cosine beta plus sine alpha times sine beta. Double check, triple check, watch your signs when you're done. All right, cosine alpha at the top, -2/5. Replaces the whole thing. Cosine beta down here, 2 square root of 10 over 7 plus sine alpha over here, square root 21 over 5. Sine beta, -3/7. All right, we have to simplify this. All right, this is a little bit nasty here because we got some radicals, we got some fractions. -2 times 2 square root of 10. That is going to be, remember, you multiply outsides together, insides together. 2 times 2 is 4. -4 square root of 10 over 35 plus, that's going to give me -3 square root of 21. You can't actually multiply anything together. 21 doesn't simplify. 5 times 7 is 35. Now, all we can do at this point is write it as a single fraction. You cannot combine these. They would have to have the same radicand. Remember, like, you can only add 2 square root of 5 plus 6 square root of 5. That's 8 square root of 5. They have to have the same insides. They do not have the same insides. We can't add them. All I can do is make that -4 square root of 10 minus 3 square root of 21 all over 35. And that is cosine of alpha minus beta. Okay, 4 square root of 10, -4 square root of 10 minus 3 square root of 21, all over 35. It's the only way you can write it. All right, so that's another type of problem you'll see in this section with your sum and difference formulas. Plug in those values in, coming up with sine, cosine, and you can also do tangent with the tangent formulas. All right, take a look at this. Sine of 52, cosine of 38 plus cosine of 52, sine of 38. You should be able to figure this out without a calculator. Well, look at your identity sheet. What has this order? If I look at my identity sheet, what goes sine, cosine, plus cosine, sine? So if I look at it, if I say sine, it's the sine of alpha times the cosine of beta plus cosine of alpha times sine of beta. That is going to equal the sine of alpha plus beta. All right, so in that case here, that just means this is going to be equivalent to the sine of 52 plus 38. Well, what's 52 plus 38? That's going to be 90. So the sine of 90 degrees. All right, what's the y-coordinate at 90 degrees? 1. So sine of 52 times cosine of 38 plus cosine of 52 plus sine of 38 equals 1. All right, take a second. Try this one. Pause that if needed. So you got cosine, cosine minus sine, sine. If you look on your sheet, what goes in the order of cosine, cosine minus sine, sine, it is the cosine of alpha plus beta. So this is really the cosine of 57 plus 33, which is again 90. So what is the cosine of 90 degrees? That is 0. Okay, done. So these aren't too bad. Just recognize the formula, plug in. They're going to have to add up to a quadrantal angle or a 30, 60, 90 angle at this point for us to do these. All right, identities. That was a big part of 6-1. They don't go away. These ones I don't think tend to be as bad. But let's take a look. Now, if you got the cosine of x plus pi over 2 equals the sine of x. All right, this is identity. We are saying they are equivalent. Every value for x works. We have to simplify this side to the left-hand side. So it is equivalent to the right-hand side. All right, well, if you look, you have the cosine of two things being added. So we want to use the cosine sum formula, which is cosine of alpha plus beta equals cosine alpha times cosine of beta minus sine alpha times sine beta. All right, all we do instead of plugging in alpha, you're going to plug in x. Instead of plugging in beta, you're going to plug in pi over 2. Look what we want to get on the right-hand side. That's what we want to end up with, is just a negative sine of x. All right, let's see how this works. All right, cosine of the first angle, cosine of x. Cosine of the second angle, cosine of pi over 2. Minus, okay, we got to use this formula, minus sine of the first angle, which is sine of x, times sine of pi over 2. All right, we don't know anything about x, but we do know pi over 2, and we do know sine of pi over 2. Cosine of pi over 2. What is the cosine at 90 degrees? Okay, that is 0. What is the sine of pi over 2? Sine of pi over 2 is 1. So what I can do is I can take out cosine of pi over 2, plug in 0. I can take out sine of pi over 2, plug in 1. So here's what I got. I got cosine of x times 0 minus sine of x times 1. All right, when I'm done, negative sine of x equals negative sine of x. So it's just a couple of steps for this identity, and these shouldn't take long. You just have to use your formula, plug in the appropriate values, simplify where you can. All right, try this one. Sine of x plus 5, x plus pi equals negative sine of x. So it equals the same thing. We just need to go through the formula and verify. Well, what is the sine of alpha plus beta? Okay, that is the sine of alpha times the cosine of beta plus cosine of alpha times sine of beta. All right, use this formula, substitute in. I get the sine of x times cosine of pi plus cosine of x times the sine of pi. All right, just like we did earlier, what's cosine of pi? Cosine of pi is negative 1. What is the sine of pi? What is the y value at 180 degrees? It is 0. So sine of x, we have to leave. Cosine of pi, negative 1, plus cosine of x times sine of pi, which is 0. That wipes that out. We're left with negative sine of x equals negative sine of x. All right, good. All right, last one. All right, another identity set up a little bit differently. Sine of x plus y divided by sine of x times sine of y equals cotangent of x plus cotangent of y. All right, so we got to get this to match up. I'm going to convert to sines and cosines on the right-hand side. Cotangent of x is cosine of x over sine of x plus cotangent of y is cosine of y over sine of y. All right, nothing really, I'm not going to worry about getting a common denominator, adding those together yet. Let's work on the left-hand side. All right, left-hand side. The only thing you can do, now you cannot cancel anything here. Do not try that, because this is a sign of two things. We have to use our sum formula. Well, what is the sum formula for sine of x plus y? It's going to be the sine of the first, okay, times the cosine of the second, plus cosine of the first, which is cosine of x, times sine of the second. All right, all over sine of x times sine of y. All right, you really got to be careful here. You cannot cancel these sines of x. You cannot cancel this and say you have cosine of x plus cosine of y. That is mathematically incorrect. So be careful there. What you can do, this is a single denominator. You have two terms in the numerator. I can split this up into two terms. All right, when I do that, it gives me the sine of x. It's going to give me this term here. Sine of x times the cosine of y over sine of x plus, now I can take this term and put it on top of the denominator, plus cosine of x times sine of y over, whoops, that should be sine of x. Sorry, sine of y. And this should be sine of x times sine of y. Okay, under that denominator. All right, now that is a product, sine of x times cosine of y, divided by sine of x times sine of y. Since everything is being multiplied, I can cancel that sine of x and that sine of x. It leaves me cosine of y over sine of y plus, all right, I have the same scenario here. These are being multiplied, these are being multiplied. Since everything's being multiplied, I can cancel. Sine of y cancels with sine of y. I am left with cosine of x over sine of x. Well, technically I could stop here, but just for fun, cosine of y over sine of y is cotangent of y plus cosine over sine. That is also cotangent of x, which is what we wanted to get from the beginning. So that's just another identity. Okay, and in this case now, our sum or difference formula shows up. All right, go ahead in class here. Do the following. Hopefully you get done before you leave. I should be here tomorrow. We'll kind of go over this. I know some of you are doing the ACT either tomorrow, and then some of you are doing the ACT the following day. We'll get everything figured out. Once I get back, we will probably have a quiz over 6.1 and 6.2. I don't know if we'll get to it this week, but that's probably going to be our next summative assignment. We will go over these in detail. If you do have any issues, don't panic. All right, thank you, and I hope to see everybody tomorrow.